He denied the baby until those ice-blue eyes opened, and every lie he ever built collapsed. The Mafia boss stormed into her hospital room ready to erase her, erase the child, erase the truth, until the newborn looked up at him with the Mancuso stare he swore belonged only to his bloodline. Now he's frozen, heart punching his ribs, because if that baby really is his, then his enemies already know. So what happens when a man feared by cities realizes the only thing more dangerous than denial is love? If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. That baby ain't mine. The words detonated through the maternity ward of Sacred Heart Hospital, like a death sentence. Cold, final, brutal. You really think I'd fall for this? Charles Mancuso barked, his voice rising with each syllable, echoing off sterile walls. A waitress? A nobody from some dive diner? This is pathetic. Jennifer Stump, 28, sat frozen on the hospital bed, her body still aching from labor that had ended only hours before. Her arms, though trembling from exhaustion and terror, wrapped protectively around the tiny bundle against her chest. Her eyes were red and swollen, but not from the birth, from everything else. She didn't answer him. Her lips pressed together so tightly they turned white. Her body curled slightly forward, instinctively sheltering the child like a mother animal protecting against a predator. I came here to shut this down, Charles continued, pacing the small room like a caged wolf, his expensive Italian shoes squeaking against linoleum. His tailored black suit was immaculate, his slicked-back hair perfect, his tattooed knuckles clenched. To see this circus with my own eyes so you never pull this garbage again. Charles. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from screaming through contractions alone. Please, just look at him. I did look, he snapped, spinning toward her. He looks like every other damn baby in this place. Pink, wrinkled, nothing special. No. Jennifer shifted her grip carefully, turning the infant slightly toward the window. A shaft of late morning light fell across the baby's face. That's when it happened. Charles saw them. The eyes, that eerie, unmistakable pale blue hue. Not the cloudy blue of newborns that fades. The Mancuso blue. Storm winter eyes that cut through fog and lies. His eyes. His father's eyes before him. His grandfather's ghost, staring back from an infant's face. A color so rare in their bloodline it was practically a brand. His gaze drifted down involuntarily. The baby's skin olive-toned like his own, not fair like Jennifer's. The shape of the nose, small but already showing a distinct bridge. The dark hair, thick, despite being newborn. Charles's heart stuttered, just once. A single hiccup of hesitation in a man who'd built an empire on never showing weakness. But then he blinked hard, shook his head, and looked away. Nah, he muttered, voice rough. Coincidence. Genetics are messy. Could be anyone's kid. That doesn't mean a damn thing. The world went silent in that half-second. Jennifer watched him, watched the flicker of recognition, the hairline crack forming in his towering wall of denial. A soft sound escaped her throat. Half sob, half broken breath. She bent down and kissed her son's forehead, then held him tighter, as if the harder she gripped, the less the pain would penetrate. You planned this, Charles snarled suddenly, stepping closer. You probably got pregnant by some other guy and figured you'd pin it on me. His finger pointed like a weapon. Must have thought it was a lottery ticket trap, the Mafia boss. Cash in for life. His words sliced through the room like shattered glass. Jennifer flinched but didn't look up. People were watching now. Nurses pretending to check charts. A security guard hovering near the doorway. Another new mother in the shared recovery area, eyes wide with horror, but none of them stepped in. None of them questioned the dangerous man in the expensive suit, intimidating the exhausted waitress in a hospital gown still stained from childbirth. You think just because I showed up at your diner late at night because I talked to you like you were human, that gives you the right to destroy my name? Charles leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, suffocating. You're trash. I gave you decent tips, treated you with basic respect, and this is how you repay me? You're not just a liar, you're delusional. Whispers grew like mold on damp walls. Jennifer heard every word. Still, she said nothing. She closed her eyes, letting the tears streak down her face in silence. Not loud, dramatic sobs. These were different. Quiet, heavy, tired. She didn't fight back. There was no point. Charles straightened his jacket, adjusted his cufflinks. "My lawyers will be in touch," he said, voice flat and cold. "Don't contact me. Don't contact anyone in my circle. If you try to go public with this fantasy, you'll regret it." He turned toward the door. Jennifer's voice cracked through her tears. "His name is Luca." Charles froze mid-step. "After your father," she whispered. "You told me once that your father had those eyes too." "Don't." Charles's voice dropped to lethal quiet. "Don't you dare use my father's name." He walked out without looking back. The door swung shut with a pneumatic hiss. Jennifer sat alone, holding baby Luca against her chest, his tiny blue eyes staring up at nothing, unaware he'd just been denied by the most powerful man in the city. Unaware those eyes had just shaken his father's entire world. If seeing her hold that baby alone hurts your heart, subscribe, don't walk away like he did, 8 months earlier. Jennifer Stump had been working double shifts at Rosie's Diner for 3 years straight when Charles Mancuso first walked through the door at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. She remembers the exact time because the clock above the register had just ticked past closing, and she'd been about to flip the sign when his shadow filled the doorway. Expensive suit, cold eyes, the kind of man who didn't ask permission. "We're closed," she'd said, exhaustion making her braver than she should have been. He'd looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. "Just coffee. I'll pay double." That's how it started. He came back the next week. Same time. Same booth in the corner, away from the windows. Always alone. Always watching the door like he expected someone to come through it with a gun. Jennifer learned not to ask questions. In a neighborhood where everyone knew Charles Mancuso's name, whispered it with fear or respect, never casually, she treated him like any other customer. Refilled his coffee without hovering, gave him space, didn't flinch when his phone rang and his voice dropped to that deadly quiet tone that made grown men disappear. Maybe that's why he kept coming back. "You're not scared of me," he said one night, 3 months into his visits. Jennifer set down the coffee pot, meeting his ice blue eyes. "Should I be? Most people are. Most people probably have a reason to be." She wiped down the counter. "I just serve coffee, not really a threat to your empire." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Smart girl. Smart enough to know when to mind my business." He started staying longer after that, talking more. Not about his work, never about his work, but about other things. Small things. The way the city changed after midnight. Old movies. His father, once, briefly, before his expression shuttered closed. "He had these eyes," Charles had said quietly, staring into his coffee cup. "Everyone said I got them from him. Only thing he ever gave me worth keeping." Jennifer had nodded, understanding the weight of absence, of complicated legacy. "My dad left when I was 6, she'd offered. Didn't leave me anything but questions. Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition. 2 people shaped by the ghosts of fathers who'd failed them in different ways. The night it happened, the night that led to everything, Charles came indifferent. Shaken. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he gripped his coffee cup. His jaw was clenched so tight, Jennifer could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Rough night?" she asked carefully. "Rough life." His voice was raw, stripped of its usual armor. She should have stayed professional, should have kept her distance. But something about the way he looked powerful and broken all at once made her sit down across from him in that empty diner booth. "You want to talk about it?" "No." He paused. "Yes. I don't know. That's honest, at least." He laughed bitterly. "Honesty. In my world, that gets you killed. Good thing we're in my world right now, then." He looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, Charles Mancuso looked vulnerable, human. "Someone close to me betrayed me tonight," he said quietly. "Someone I trusted. And I can't." His voice cracked. "I can't show weakness. Can't let them see it broke me." But it did. Jennifer reached across the table, her hand covering his tattooed knuckles. A gesture so simple it shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. "You're allowed to be human," she whispered. "Even you." His eyes locked on hers, those winter blue eyes that would later stare back at her from their son's face. "You see me," he said, wonder and fear mixing in his voice. "You actually see me. I see you." What happened next was inevitable. Months of tension, of late-night conversations, of 2 lonely people finding comfort in the only place that felt real. He drove her home that morning, walked her to her apartment door, hesitated. "This is a mistake," he said. "Probably," she agreed. He kissed her anyway. He left before sunrise, slipping out of her bed like a ghost. No promises, no words. Just the fading scent of his cologne and the sound of his car engine disappearing into the dawn. Jennifer lay there, already knowing she'd fallen for someone she could never have. She just didn't know yet that she was already carrying the proof. If you believe no woman should face pregnancy alone, subscribe. Your support costs nothing but means everything. 6 weeks later, Jennifer stared at the pregnancy test in the diner's bathroom, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it in the toilet. Positive. The second line was faint but undeniable. Like everything else about Charles Mancuso, barely visible but impossible to ignore. She'd taken 3 more tests, all positive, all screaming the truth she didn't want to face. She was pregnant. By a man who'd disappeared like smoke the morning after. A man who hadn't returned to the diner since that night. A man whose world would see her baby as a liability, a weakness, a target. It took her 2 weeks to find the courage to call him. His number, the one he'd scrawled on a napkin months ago with a casual, "In case you ever need anything," felt like a live wire in her trembling fingers. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Yeah, Charles, it's Jennifer. From the diner." Silence. Long enough that she thought he'd hung up. "I know who you are." His voice was flat, careful. "What do you want?" The coldness in those 4 words nearly broke her resolve. "I need to see you. It's important. I'm busy." "Charles, please. Just 20 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Another pause. "Tomorrow, noon. The bench at Riverside Park. Come alone." The line went dead. He was already there when she arrived, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky, his posture rigid. Jennifer sat down, leaving space between them. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "So?" Charles didn't look at her. "What's this about?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Charles went perfectly still. Not the stillness of calm, the stillness of a predator deciding whether to attack or flee. "That's not possible." His voice was ice. "It is. I'm 8 weeks. The timing. How many other men?" He turned to face her, and even through the sunglasses she could feel the accusation in his stare. Jennifer's breath caught. "What? How many other men?" Each word bitten off, sharp as glass. "Before me? After me? There was no one else. Charles, you know." "I don't know anything." He stood abruptly, towering over her. "I know a waitress I was stupid enough to sleep with one time is now conveniently pregnant and looking for a payday." "A payday?" Jennifer stood too, anger overriding fear. "You think I planned this? You think I wanted this? I think you saw an opportunity and took it." His jaw clenched. "You're not the first woman to try this game. You won't be the last." This isn't a game. This is a baby. There is no our." Charles stepped closer, voice dropping to that deadly quiet that made her blood run cold. "There's you, trying to trap me. And there's me, telling you right now that kid isn't mine." Tears burned Jennifer's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking for money. I just thought you deserved to know. What I deserve is to not be played for a fool." He pulled an envelope from his jacket, threw it on the bench. "There's $5,000. Get rid of it. Or don't. But either way, lose my number." Jennifer stared at the envelope like it was a snake. I want you to understand something very clearly." Charles leaned in close enough that she could see her reflection in his sunglasses. "If you come at me with this again, if you tell anyone, if you try to claim that baby is mine, you'll regret it. Not because I'll do anything to you, but because my world, it eats people like you alive." "People like me?" "People who think they matter." The words hit harder than a slap. Charles walked away without looking back, his expensive shoes clicking against pavement like a countdown to nothing. Jennifer sank back onto the bench, staring at the envelope. $5,000 to erase a life. To erase the consequence of one vulnerable night when they'd both been human together. She left the money on the bench. Let someone else find it. Someone who needed it more than she needed to keep her dignity. She walked home alone, one hand pressed against her still flat stomach, whispering the first promise she'd ever make to her unborn child. "I'll protect you, even from your father. Especially from him. If your heart hurt for her there, don't just watch, subscribe so she never feels abandoned again." 7 months later. The contractions started during Jennifer's shift at the diner. She'd been carrying plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes when the first wave hit, a tightening so intense she had to grip the counter to stay upright. "You okay, hun?" Rosa, the cook, peered through the kitchen window. "Fine," Jennifer lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." She wasn't fine. She was 38 weeks pregnant, working on swollen feet because maternity leave meant no paycheck. Her studio apartment rent was already 2 weeks late. The baby's second-hand crib sat unassembled in the corner because she was too exhausted to build it alone. And Charles Mancuso hadn't called. Not once. Not ever. The second contraction hit 20 minutes later. Stronger. Longer. "Jennifer." Rosa came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Your water just broke, didn't it?" Jennifer looked down. A puddle spread across the black and white checkered floor. "Oh God." Her voice cracked. "I can't, I'm not ready." "You're ready." Rosa grabbed Jennifer's purse, her coat. "Mario, call her a cab." "I don't have money for a cab." "Then I'm paying. Move." Sacred Heart Hospital's emergency entrance was chaos ambulances, screaming, fluorescent lights that made everything look like a nightmare. Jennifer filled out forms with shaking hands while contractions tore through her body every 5 minutes. Name? Insurance. She checked. None. Emergency contact. Her pen hovered over the blank line. Who could she call? Her mother had died 3 years ago. No siblings. No close friends. Double shifts didn't leave time for friends. She left it blank. "Any family we should notify?" the intake nurse asked kindly. "No." Jennifer's voice was small. "Just me." The nurse's expression softened with pity. "Okay, sweetheart. Let's get you to labor and delivery." Labor was hell. 12 hours of pain that made Jennifer understand why women screamed. She'd thought she'd be strong, dignified, quiet. She was none of those things. She begged for drugs they couldn't give her yet, cried for her dead mother, gripped the bed rails so hard her knuckles turned white, and through it all, she kept looking at the door, hoping, praying that somehow Charles would walk through it, that he'd realize he'd made a mistake, that those 7 months of silence had been fear, not cruelty. The door stayed closed, until it didn't. At hour 9, when Jennifer was delirious with pain, she saw him. Through the small window in the door, Charles Mancuso stood in the hallway, hands in his pockets, staring into her room like a man watching an execution. Their eyes met. Jennifer's heart lurched. Hope flared so bright it hurt worse than the contractions. "Charles," she whispered. He stood there for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then he turned and walked away. Jennifer's sob was swallowed by another contraction. The nurse holding her hand thought she was crying from the pain. She was, just not the kind anyone could see on a monitor. At 3:47 a.m., Luca Thomas Stump entered the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect fingers, perfect toes, a shock of dark hair and eyes that would change color but were already showing hints of something pale and striking. The nurse placed him on Jennifer's chest, still slick and crying. "Hi, baby," Jennifer whispered, exhausted tears streaming down her face. "Hi, I'm your mama. I've got you. I've got you." Luca's tiny hand wrapped around her finger with surprising strength. In that moment, holding her son for the first time, Jennifer felt 2 things simultaneously: overwhelming love and devastating loneliness. This perfect creature, half her, half Charles, would grow up without a father, would ask questions she didn't know how to answer, would carry the weight of rejection he was too young to understand. "I'll protect you," she whispered against his soft head. "From everyone. From everything. Even from the truth if I have to." A nurse bustled in with paperwork. "Congratulations, Mama. He's beautiful. Now, I need the father's information for the birth certificate." "There is no father." Jennifer's voice was hollow. "Just leave it blank." The nurse hesitated, then nodded gently. "Okay, honey. Just you and him. That's enough." But it wasn't enough. Jennifer knew it wasn't. She clutched Luca tighter as he nursed for the first time, his blue-gray eyes staring up at her with perfect trust. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "My lawyers will be in contact. Do not list me on any official documents. Not congratulations. Not, is he healthy? Not, I'm sorry. Just legal threats wrapped in cold efficiency." Jennifer deleted the message and turned off her phone. Then she held her son and wept quiet, exhausted tears that no one witnessed. If you stayed through her silent labor, you care hit subscribe so she isn't alone in this world. 22 hours after birth, Jennifer had just finished nursing Luca when she heard the footsteps. Heavy, purposeful. The kind of walk that announced power before the person even appeared. Her hospital room door swung open without a knock. Charles Mancuso stood in the doorway, looking like he'd come to deliver a death sentence. His suit was different from yesterday, charcoal instead of black, but his expression was the same. Cold. Decided. Final. I want this done, he said, not bothering with greetings. One time, one conversation. Then you never contact me again. Jennifer's arms tightened around Luca instinctively. You don't need to be here. I need to see it myself. Charles stepped into the room, hands in his pockets. Need to look at this situation clearly so we can move forward with no confusion. Situation. Jennifer's voice cracked. You mean your son? I mean the baby you're trying to pin on me. The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples of hurt through Jennifer's chest. Charles, please, save it. He moved closer, eyes scanning Luca's sleeping face with clinical detachment. I've seen 1,000 scams. This is just another one. Probably lined up 3 other guys to hit with paternity claims. There were no other guys. Jennifer's voice rose, startling Luca awake. His tiny face scrunched, preparing to cry. Shh, baby, shh. She rocked him gently, pressing him against her chest. It's okay. Mama's here. Charles watched this with something unreadable flickering across his face. Then his expression hardened again. He could be anyone's. You know that. I know that. This whole performance. Just look at him. Jennifer's voice broke. Really look at him, Charles. Please. I am looking. I see a baby. Like every other baby in this hospital. No. Jennifer shifted carefully, turning Luca toward the morning light streaming through the window. Look at his eyes. He's a newborn. All babies have. Charles stopped mid-sentence. The light caught Luca's face perfectly. His eyes, which had been closed moments before, opened slowly. Pale blue. Not the muddy, undefined blue-gray of most newborns. Clear, striking, eerie blue. The color of winter storms. The color of ancestral ice. Mancuso blue. Charles's breath hitched, barely audible, but Jennifer heard it. She watched his face as recognition flickered a crack in the armor, lightning fast before he could slam the shutters closed. Anyone can have blue eyes, Charles said, but his voice was different now. Rougher. Less certain. Not like these. Jennifer's tears fell silently. You know they're not just any blue. You told me your father had these eyes. That you have these eyes. That only one other person in your family line. Coincidence. Charles stepped back. Genetics don't prove anything. Plenty of people have blue eyes. Look at his skin. Jennifer was begging now. Dignity abandoned. Look at his nose. His hair. Charles, please. He's yours. You know he's yours. Luca stared up at his father with those impossible eyes, innocent, unblinking, knowing nothing of rejection or denial or the war happening around him. For one heartbeat, Charles stared back. Something passed between them, father and son. Blood to blood, truth to truth. Charles's hand lifted slightly, as if drawn by invisible thread toward the baby's tiny fingers. Then he caught himself. His hand dropped. His jaw clenched. The wall rebuilt itself brick by brick. You're delusional, he said flatly. You've convinced yourself of a fantasy because the alternative that you're just another single mother who made a mistake is too pathetic to accept. Jennifer flinched like he'd struck her. I came here to make this clear, Charles continued, voice rising. That baby isn't mine. I won't claim it. I won't support it. I won't acknowledge it. If you try to force this, if you come at me legally, publicly, any way at all, you'll lose everything. I've already lost everything. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. You made sure of that. Charles pulled an envelope from his jacket thicker than the last one and dropped it on the hospital tray table. 20,000. Final offer. Take it and disappear. Raise the kid somewhere else. Change your number. Lose mine. He turned toward the door. His name is Luca, Jennifer said, voice trembling but defiant. After your father. Because even if you won't be his father, I wanted him to have something from your family. Something real. Charles froze in the doorway, shoulders rigid. You don't get to use my father's name, he said without turning around. You don't get to use anything from my world. He walked out. The door closed with mechanical finality. Jennifer looked down at Luca, who was staring up at her with those devastating blue eyes, the eyes that proved everything and changed nothing. It's just us, baby, she whispered, pressing her lips to his forehead. Just us against the world. But outside in the hallway, Charles Mancuso stood frozen against the wall, his hand pressed against his chest where his heart was hammering too hard, too fast. Those eyes. His father's eyes. His eyes. God help him his son's eyes. 3 days later. Jennifer's studio apartment felt smaller with a newborn in it. Luca slept in the second-hand crib she'd finally assembled, her hands shaking with exhaustion as she'd fumbled with the screws at 2 a.m. while he screamed. The walls were thin enough that she could hear her neighbor's television, their arguments, their whole lives bleeding through cheap drywall. She'd brought Luca home in a taxi, using the last $40 in her checking account. The envelope Charles had left at the hospital sat unopened on her kitchen counter. She couldn't look at it without feeling sick. $20,000 to erase herself, to pretend Luca had no father, to disappear like she'd never mattered at all. She was changing Luca's diaper when the knock came. Firm, professional, not the knock of a neighbor or friend. Jennifer froze, one hand on her son's tiny ankle. "Who is it?" she called out. "Delivery for Jennifer Stump." She opened the door with the chain still latched. A man in an expensive suit stood there, not Charles, but cut from the same cloth. Cold eyes, predator smile. "Sign here, please." He held out an electronic tablet. "I didn't order anything." "It's a legal delivery, ma'am. You need to sign." Jennifer's hands trembled as she unlatched the chain and signed. The man handed her a thick manila envelope, tipped an imaginary hat, and walked away. She closed the door and locked it. Then the deadbolt. Then the chain. Inside the envelope, legal documents, non-disclosure agreement, paternity waiver, and a cashier's check for $200,000. Jennifer's knees went weak. $200,000. Enough to move somewhere safe. To take time off work. To give Luca everything she couldn't afford: good childcare, decent clothes, a future that didn't smell like desperation. All she had to do was sign away his father. Forever. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Hello? You got the package." Not Charles' voice. Someone older, smoother, more dangerous. "Who is this?" "A friend of Mr. Mancuso. He wanted me to explain the terms clearly so there's no confusion." Jennifer's blood turned to ice. "I'm listening." "Sign the documents. Deposit the check. Never speak Charles Mancuso's name in connection with your child. Never attempt contact. Never file for paternity or support. In exchange, you walk away clean, comfortable, safe. And if I don't sign?" The pause was calculated. "Then things become complicated. You understand complicated, don't you, Jennifer? You understand how accidents happen, how single mothers fall on hard times, how children end up in the system when their mothers can't provide adequate care. Are you threatening me?" Her voice shook with fury now, not fear. "I'm explaining reality. You're a waitress with no money, no family, no resources. Charles is a man with considerable influence. If this becomes a legal matter, you'll lose, badly, and your son will suffer for your poor judgment." Tears burned Jennifer's eyes. "He deserves to know his father. He deserves a mother who makes smart choices. Sign the papers, take the money, give the kid a good life. That's the smart choice." So, the line went dead. Jennifer stared at the check, $200,000 made out to her name. More money than she'd earn in 5 years of double shifts. Blood money. She thought about Luca's eyes. About Charles standing in that hospital doorway, staring at his son and choosing pride over love. She thought about her own father, who'd walked away when she was 6. How she'd spent her whole life wondering if she hadn't been enough. If she'd done something wrong. If she was fundamentally unlovable. She wouldn't let Luca carry that weight. Jennifer walked to the kitchen sink, turned on the garbage disposal, and fed the check into it piece by piece. $200,000 turned to confetti, then pulp, then nothing. She did the same with the legal documents, tearing them slowly, methodically, until the apartment floor was covered in white paper snow. Then she picked up Luca from his crib and held him close. "Your father thinks we can be bought," she whispered against his soft head. "He thinks dignity has a price. He's wrong." Her phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number. "Wrong choice. You'll regret this." Jennifer blocked the number and turned off her phone. Through her apartment window, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. It hadn't been there this morning. She closed the blinds with shaking hands, locked the windows, and sat in the dark with her son. Waiting. For what? She didn't know. But Charles Mancuso had made it clear. She'd chosen war instead of surrender. And wars, even silent ones, always had casualties. Jennifer just prayed her son wouldn't be one of them. 2 weeks later, the black SUV followed Jennifer everywhere. To the bodega where she bought formula, to the laundromat where she washed Luca's onesies, to the pediatrician's office for his 2-week checkup. Always there. Always watching. Never approaching. She stopped sleeping through the night, not just because of Luca's feeding schedule, but because every sound in the hallway made her bolt upright, heart hammering. "You look terrible," Rosa said when Jennifer returned to work. Luca strapped to her chest in a second-hand carrier. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're jumpy as a cat." Rosa peered at the baby. "He's beautiful, though. Those eyes. Never seen eyes that color on a newborn." Jennifer's stomach twisted. "Yeah, he's special. His daddy should be helping you. Where is he?" "Gone." The word tasted like ash. Rosa squeezed her shoulder. "Then we're your family now, mija. You hear me?" Jennifer nodded, tears threatening. Family. She'd almost forgotten what that felt like. What Jennifer didn't know was that 3 miles away, in the back room of Salvatore's restaurant, Charles Mancuso's empire was fracturing. "You've got a bastard kid running around the Bronx with your eyes, and you're doing nothing about it?" Vincent Calabrese, Charles's underboss, slammed his hand on the table. "You know what people are saying?" Charles kept his expression blank. "I don't give a damn what people say." "Well, you should." Vincent leaned forward. "They're saying you're soft. That some diner waitress has you by the balls. That you're paying her off instead of handling it." "It's handled." "Is it? Because Tommy Rizzo's crew saw her at the clinic yesterday, with the baby. And Tommy says that kid's got the Mancuso mark all over him." Charles's jaw clenched. Tommy should mind his own business. "This is his business. It's all our business." Another voice, Angelo Petrov, the family's consigliere. "You think the Bratva doesn't know? The triads? Every crew in the 5 boroughs is watching to see how you handle this. Weakness spreads like cancer, Charles." "There's no weakness to spread. The kid isn't mine." Vincent laughed bitterly. "Then prove it. Get a test. Make it official. Or better yet what?" Charles's voice dropped to that lethal quiet. Vincent didn't flinch. "Make the problem disappear, permanently. Her and the kid. Clean. Quiet. No one mourns a single mother and her bastard." The room went silent. Charles stood slowly, his chair scraping against concrete. He walked around the table until he was inches from Vincent's face. "Say that again," Charles whispered. About the kid." Vincent's eyes widened slightly. "Boss, I'm just saying what needs to be said. What your father would've." Charles's fist connected with Vincent's jaw before anyone could blink. The underboss crashed backward into the wall, blood streaming from his split lip. "My father," Charles said, voice shaking with barely controlled rage, "is dead. And no one touches that woman or her child. You understand me?" Vincent wiped blood from his mouth, staring at Charles with new understanding. "Jesus Christ, it really is yours." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Angelo stood, adjusting his glasses. "Charles, you need to understand the position this puts us in. If that child is yours and you don't claim it, you look weak. If you do claim it, you look vulnerable. Either way, vultures are circling. Then let them circle." "They won't just circle." Angelo's voice was grave. "Dmitry Volkov already called me, asking questions, offering assistance if the situation becomes complicated." Charles's blood ran cold. Dmitry Volkov, head of the Russian Bratva, didn't offer assistance. He offered violence wrapped in politeness. "What kind of questions?" "About the mother, where she lives, where she works, whether she has protection." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. "Put security on her." Charles heard himself say the words before he'd decided to. "Discreet. She doesn't know they're there. But no one gets near her or the kid." Vincent struggled to his feet, still holding his jaw. "So you are claiming it." "I'm protecting what's mine." Charles grabbed his coat. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Angelo asked quietly. Charles didn't answer. He walked out into the night, past his crew's confused stares, into the parking lot where his car waited. He sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, not starting the engine. Then he pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo he'd told himself he'd deleted. Jennifer's neighbor had posted it on social media 3 days ago. Jennifer holding Luca in her apartment window. The baby's face turned toward the light, those impossible blue eyes clear and bright. The caption, "New mama next door, with the most beautiful baby I've ever seen. Number blessed." The photo had 63 shares already. 63 people spreading his son's face across the internet like currency. Charles stared at those eyes, his father's legacy staring back through time and blood in denial. "Damn it," he whispered. "Damn it to hell." He saved the photo. Then he made a call. I need a DNA test. Discreet, fast, and completely off the books. 1 week later, the DNA test was scheduled for 3 a.m. at a private clinic in Queens, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and didn't keep records. Charles sat in his car outside Jennifer's building at 2:47 a.m., watching her darkened window. A part of him hoped she wouldn't show, that she'd refuse, that this whole nightmare would disappear through her defiance. But at 2:52, her light flicked on. He watched her shadow move behind the curtains, the careful, exhausted movements of a new mother preparing to face something terrible. Charles's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He could drive away right now, pretend the appointment didn't exist, continue living in the comfortable lie that Luca wasn't his. But those eyes haunted him. Every night. Every time he closed his own. Winter blue. Mancuso blue. His father's ghost demanding acknowledgement from beyond the grave. At 3:03, Jennifer emerged from her building. Luca bundled against her chest. She looked around nervously, afraid, isolated, small against the dark city. Charles felt something twist in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to guilt. His phone buzzed. Angelo, the clinic is secure. No witnesses, no records. Whatever happens tonight stays buried. Charles typed back, good. But nothing about this felt good. The clinic was sterile, cold, empty, except for a single nurse practitioner who looked like she'd seen everything and judged nothing. Jennifer sat in the plastic chair, rocking Luca gently. She didn't look at Charles when he entered, didn't acknowledge him at all. Miss Stump? Mr. Doe? The nurse used the fake name they'd provided. We're ready. The swab process took less than 5 minutes. A quick scrape inside Charles's cheek. Then Luca's the baby, fussing but not crying, his blue eyes wide and confused. Results in 48 hours, the nurse said. Sent to the email provided. Cash payment only. Charles handed her an envelope. Make it 24. That'll cost extra. I don't care what it costs. The nurse nodded and disappeared. Charles and Jennifer sat in silence, Luca between them like a living question mark. You didn't have to do this, Jennifer finally said, her voice hollow. I already know the answer. I need proof. You have proof. You've always had proof. You just needed permission to believe it. Charles said nothing. Because she was right. What happens when the test comes back positive? Jennifer asked quietly. When science confirms what those eyes already told you, will you finally be his father? Or will you just find another excuse to run? I'm not running. You've been running since the day I told you I was pregnant. Jennifer looked at him, then really looked at him, and Charles saw the exhaustion, the fear, the bone-deep weariness of fighting alone. You're terrified of what he represents, not because he's illegitimate, because he's proof you're human, that you can create something instead of just destroy. The words hit like bullets. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Jennifer's laugh was bitter. You told me once about your father, how he built an empire but died alone because he confused fear with respect. You swore you'd be different, but look at you, Charles. You're becoming exactly what you feared. My father? Your father gave you those eyes and nothing else. You said so yourself. Jennifer stood, adjusting Luca in her arms. Now you have a chance to give your son more than genetics, to actually be present, but you're too scared of looking weak to your crew, so you'll sacrifice him instead. Charles stood too, anger and shame warring in his chest. You think it's that simple? You think I can just claim him and everything's fine? My world doesn't work that way. There are rules, consequences. People who would see a baby as leverage, as a weapon, as a reason to become better. Jennifer's voice cracked. Or you could stop making excuses and admit the truth you don't want to be his father because that would mean admitting you care about something more than power. Silence crashed between them. Luca made a small sound, not quite a cry, just a soft coo. Both their heads turned toward him instinctively. He was staring at Charles with those impossible eyes, curious, innocent, unknowing. Charles felt his carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. I'm afraid, he heard himself whisper, of failing him, of being like my father, of caring about something that can be used against me. Jennifer's expression softened slightly. Then be afraid and be his father anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Charles. It's loving someone despite it. 24 hours later, Charles sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at the email on his laptop screen. Subject: DNA analysis results. Case #47 day 20. His finger hovered over the mouse. One click. One moment. Then everything would change. Angelo knocked and entered without waiting. The results came in? Yeah. And? Charles clicked the attachment. A PDF loaded. Pages of technical jargon, genetic markers, probability percentages. At the bottom, in bold, probability of paternity, 99.99%. The room seemed to tilt. Boss? Angelo's voice came from far away. Charles stared at the number. 99.99%. As close to absolute truth as science allowed. Luca was his son. Not maybe. Not probably. Certainly. Undeniably. Written in blood and genes and those haunting blue eyes. His son. He had a son. Charles, talk to me. Angelo moved closer. What do you want to do? What did he want to do? The question rattled around his skull like a bullet ricocheting in a chamber. He could bury the results, pretend they never existed, continue denying, continue running, or he could stop being a coward. Charles stood slowly, his body moving before his mind caught up. He grabbed his coat, his keys. Where are you going? Angelo called after him. To see my son, Charles said. And for the first time in 7 months, the words didn't feel like a lie. He knocked on Jennifer's door at 11 p.m. Gentle, hesitant, not the aggressive pounding from before. She opened it with Luca on her hip, her face exhausted and wary. The results came, Charles said simply. Jennifer's breath caught. And? He's mine. Charles's voice broke on the words. Luca is mine. Tears spilled down Jennifer's cheeks, relief, vindication, fear, hope all tangled together. Charles stepped forward, close enough to see Luca's face clearly. Those eyes, his father's eyes, his eyes. Can I? His voice was barely a whisper. Can I hold him? Jennifer hesitated. Every instinct screamed to protect her son from this man who'd caused so much pain, but she saw something different in Charles's face now. Something raw and real and terrified. She held Luca out carefully. Charles took his son for the first time, his hands shaking, his breath uneven. Luca was so small, so fragile, so impossibly perfect. Hi, Charles whispered, his voice cracking. Hi, Luca. I'm your father. The baby stared up at him with solemn blue eyes. And Charles Mancuso, feared Mafia boss, man of violence and power, began to cry. Silent tears streaking down his face as he held his son and felt 7 months of denial shatter into pieces at his feet. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. For everything. For running. For denying you. For making your mother suffer alone. Jennifer watched, her own tears falling. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of something that could one day become it. He looks like you, she said softly. He looks like my father. Charles couldn't stop staring. Like the best part of a broken legacy. Then be better than the legacy, Jennifer whispered. Be the father he deserves. Charles nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. For the first time since the hospital, he wasn't running. He was present. He was terrified. But he was there. The next morning, the emergency meeting was called for 6 a.m. at Salvatore's, early enough that the restaurant was empty, late enough that the night crew had gone home. Charles arrived first, the DNA results printed and folded in his jacket pocket. He'd spent the whole night awake after leaving Jennifer's apartment, Luca's weight still phantom present in his arms. Vincent arrived next, his jaw still bruised from where Charles had hit him. Then Angelo. Then the rest of the captain's 12 men, who controlled territories, money, violence. Men who answered to Charles because he'd proven himself ruthless enough to lead them. Today he'd have to prove something else entirely. This better be important, Vincent muttered, pouring coffee. I was in the middle of, the baby's mine. Charles's voice cut through the room like a blade. Silence fell like a guillotine. What? Vincent's coffee cup paused halfway to his mouth. Luca, Jennifer's son. The DNA test came back positive, 99.99% match. Charles pulled the papers from his pocket and tossed them on the table. He's my son. Angelo was the first to speak, his voice measured. And what do you intend to do about it? I'm claiming him. Publicly. Today. The room erupted. Are you insane? Vincent slammed his cup down. You can't claim a bastard kid with some waitress. The families will see it as weakness. Let them. Let them? Vincent stood, face flushing red. You're the head of this organization. You don't get to have messy personal lives. You don't get to... I have a son. Charles's voice was steel wrapped in ice. And I will acknowledge him. Anyone who has a problem with that can speak up now. I have a problem with it, Vincent shot back. You know what Dmitry Volkov is already saying? That you're compromised, that your judgment is clouded, that maybe it's time for new leadership. Dmitry Volkov can say whatever he wants from whatever hole he's crawled into. Charles leaned forward. But if he or anyone else thinks a baby makes me weak, they're welcome to test that theory. Personally, it's not about strength, Angelo interjected calmly. It's about perception. In our world, perception is reality. If the other families believe you're distracted, vulnerable because of personal attachments, then they're right, Charles interrupted. I am vulnerable. I do care about something more than business, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise anymore. The captains exchanged glances, some shocked, some calculating, some openly hostile. Your father would never have. Vincent started. My father died alone in a hospital room with no one who loved him at his bedside. Charles's voice was quiet but devastating. He built an empire on fear and left nothing but enemies. Is that what you want me to aspire to? Vincent had no answer. I'm not my father, Charles continued. And I won't make his mistakes. Luca is my son. Jennifer is under my protection. Anyone, and I mean anyone who threatens them, threatens me directly. Are we clear? What about the Bratva? Another captain, Sal Marconi, spoke up. They're already sniffing around. If they find out about the kid, they already know about the kid. Everyone knows. Charles stood, commanding the room. Which is exactly why I'm making this official. I won't give them ammunition by looking like I'm hiding something. I won't let them use my son as leverage because I was too proud to acknowledge him. And the mother? Vincent asked. What'd she get out of this? Because I guarantee she's going to want money, status. She wants nothing. Charles's jaw clenched. She tore up $200,000 in hush money because she refused to let me buy my son's dignity. She's not after my money or my name. She just wants me to be a father. The simple truth of it hung in the air. Angelo studied Charles carefully. This changes you. You understand that? Once you claim him publicly, there's no going back. You'll have made yourself deliberately vulnerable in a world that preys on vulnerability. I know. Rival families will target them. Use them as leverage. Your enemies will multiply. Let them come. Charles' voice was cold. Certain. I've spent my whole life being feared. Maybe it's time I had something worth protecting instead. Vincent shook his head in disgust. You're going to get yourself killed, and that kid and his mother along with you. Or I'm going to show everyone that strength isn't just about how much fear you can inspire. Charles looked at each man in turn. It's about what you're willing to stand for when it costs you everything. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Angelo spoke. If you're going to do this, do it right. Public acknowledgement. Legal paternity filing. Protection detail on the mother and child visible enough to deter threats but discreet enough not to terrify her. And you need to meet with the other family heads. Personally. Show them this isn't weakness, it's a line they don't cross. Charles nodded. Set up the meetings. This is a mistake, Vincent muttered. A huge mistake. Maybe. Charles grabbed his coat. But it's my mistake to make, and my son to protect. Anyone who can't live with that can walk now. No one moved, not because they agreed, but because Charles Mancuso had just drawn a line in blood and fire, and crossing it meant war. Meeting adjourned, Charles said. I have somewhere to be. Where? Angelo asked. To tell my son's mother that he's going to have a father after all. Charles walked out into the morning light, feeling the weight of leadership shift on his shoulders. He'd just chosen vulnerability over invincibility, his son over his empire, love over fear, and there was no going back. That afternoon, Jennifer was folding tiny onesies when the knock came soft, hesitant, nothing like Charles's usual aggressive arrivals. She opened the door with Luca against her shoulder, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Charles stood there looking different. Not smaller, exactly. Just human. His suit was rumpled, his hair slightly messy. His eyes, those ice blue eyes, were raw with something she'd never seen before. Uncertainty. Can I come in? He asked quietly. Jennifer stepped aside wordlessly. Charles entered her small studio apartment, seeing it clearly for the first time. The peeling paint, the second-hand furniture, the crib held together with determination and duct tape, the life she'd built from scraps while he'd denied her from his penthouse. Shame crashed over him in waves. I told my crew this morning, he said, standing awkwardly in the middle of her tiny living space. About Luca, about the DNA test. I claimed him publicly, Jennifer's breath caught. You did? Yeah. Charles's hands were shaking. He shoved them in his pockets to hide it. I'm filing legal paternity papers this week, acknowledging him officially. There's no hiding anymore. No more denying. Why? Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. Why now? Because I held him last night and I realized, Charles's voice broke. I realized that I've been so terrified of being my father that I was becoming exactly like him, choosing power over people, control over connection. And I can't. I won't do that to Luca. Or to you. Tears spilled down Jennifer's cheeks. You hurt us. You denied him. Called me a liar, threatened me, tried to buy me off. I know. Charles took a step closer, his voice thick with regret. I know. And I can spend the rest of my life apologizing, and it won't be enough. I was a coward. I was terrified, and I made you suffer for my fear. He needed you. Jennifer's voice cracked. I needed you, and you chose pride instead. I chose wrong. Charles met her eyes. But I'm here now, and I know showing up doesn't fix anything. I know I have to earn trust, earn forgiveness, earn the right to be his father. But I'm asking for the chance to try. Jennifer looked down at Luca, who was staring up at his father with those knowing blue eyes. What does this mean? She asked quietly. For us? For him? It means he'll never wonder if his father wanted him. He'll know. Every day. Charles's voice was fierce with conviction. It means you'll never face this alone again. Financial support, yes. But more than that, actual presence. Actual fatherhood. Not just money and lawyers, but showing up. Being there. Your world is dangerous, Charles. I know. Which is why I'm putting protection on both of you. Discreet security. People you'll never see but who'll make sure nothing happens to you. I don't want to live in fear. You won't, I promise. Charles took another step closer. But I need you to understand claiming Luca publicly means some people will see him as leverage. As a way to get to me. I'm doing everything I can to prevent that. But loving you comes with a target. Jennifer's voice was hollow. Yes. She was silent for a long moment, rocking Luca gently. I don't love you, Charles. Not anymore. You broke that. The words hit him like physical blows, but he nodded. I know. But Luca deserves a father. A real one. Not a checkbook and empty promises. I want to be that. I don't know how. My father wasn't exactly a role model, but I'll learn. I'll try. His voice cracked. I'll be there. However you need me to be. Jennifer studied him, this powerful, dangerous man reduced to pleading in her tiny apartment. You can hold him, she said finally. But you have to sit. You look like you're about to collapse. Charles sank onto her worn couch gratefully. Jennifer carefully transferred Luca into his arms. The baby settled against his father's chest, tiny fist curling into Charles's shirt. Those blue eyes, mirror images, stared at each other. Hi, son, Charles whispered, his voice breaking. I'm sorry I took so long to get here. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you were born. I'm sorry I denied you. Luca made a small sound, not quite a coo, not quite a cry. I'm going to do better, Charles continued, tears streaming freely now. I'm going to be better. You deserve a father who shows up, who's brave enough to love you even when it's terrifying. And I promise you, I swear on everything I have, I'll be that father. Jennifer watched, her own tears falling silently. This wasn't forgiveness. Forgiveness would take time, proof, consistent action over empty words. But it was a start. He needs changing, she said softly. And a bottle in about 20 minutes. Charles looked up at her, understanding the test she was offering. Show me how. So Jennifer taught Charles Mancuso, feared Mafia boss, man of violence and power, how to change a diaper, how to warm a bottle, how to support Luca's tiny head while he fed. And Charles learned with shaking hands and fierce concentration, like every small act was sacred, because it was. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening in a studio apartment in the Bronx. A revolution where a man chose vulnerability over strength, where love became more important than empire, where a baby's blue eyes rewrote the rules of power. Thank you, Charles whispered to Jennifer as Luca finished his bottle and fell asleep against his chest. For not giving up on him. For being strong when I was weak. For being everything he needed when I was nothing. Jennifer nodded, exhausted and wary, but seeing maybe for the first time the man Charles could become if he tried. Don't thank me yet, she said quietly. Showing up once is easy. Showing up every day? That's the hard part. That's where most men fail. I won't fail him. Charles looked down at his sleeping son. I can't. He's the best thing I'll ever create. And I won't let fear steal that from either of us again. The afternoon light filtered through Jennifer's worn curtains, painting father and son in gold. It wasn't a happy ending. It was barely a beginning, but for the first time since that night in the diner 8 months ago, Jennifer allowed herself to hope. Hope that Charles Mancuso might actually mean what he said. Hope that Luca might have a father after all. Hope that redemption, real, hard-earned redemption, might actually be possible. Even for a man who'd built his life on being unredeemable. Stay for dinner, Jennifer said quietly. It's just pasta. Nothing fancy. But stay. Charles looked up at her, gratitude and wonder mixing in his expression. I'd like that, he whispered. I'd like that very much. So he stayed, holding his son, learning to be human, beginning the long, difficult journey from king to father. And in that small apartment, with a sleeping baby and an exhausted mother, and a man finally brave enough to choose love over power, redemption took its first fragile breath. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.